Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's talk about the world of Impact Wrestling. Let's talk about Bray Wyatt. There's been a lot of talk about Bray Wyatt and Impact ever since he was released by WWE, really, but certainly those discussions about Bray Wyatt possibly going to Impact Wrestling have really started to ramp up over the course of the last few weeks, certainly the last 7 days or so. And I think it kind of stems from a bit of misinformation, a bit of people confusing opinion with reports and opinion with reality, all that kind of stuff. So let's get into what's going on when it comes to Bray Wyatt and Impact Wrestling. And it really all stems from Brian Alvarez, really, sharing his opinion or his thought process on Bray Wyatt's next move after being released by WWE. Now, we know that Impact Wrestling have been interested in Bray Wyatt ever since he was released by WWE. That's been out there. That's been reported by the likes of Fightful Select, Dave Meltzer, PW Insider. Everyone's been reporting that Impact Wrestling is interested in Bray Wyatt. They want to bring the former Universal Champion into Impact Wrestling. Why wouldn't they? You know, this time 12 months ago, or certainly about 18 months ago, Bray Wyatt was one of the hottest acts in WWE and the whole of professional wrestling. This guy was super over. He was working with John Cena at WrestleMania. He was Universal Champion, all that kind of stuff. The Fiend was a massively over character, huge merchandise seller, real popular act within WWE. So, of course, Impact Wrestling would want a guy that's a former Universal Champion, a former WrestleMania headliner. Of course, they would want to bring him into Impact. They have made it no secret that they want to bring in Bray Wyatt to Impact Wrestling. There's a lot of expectation, though, that Bray Wyatt will go to AEW, and the expectation is that he will make his debut right before Full Gear and probably appear at Full Gear in November. So what's going on when it comes to Bray Wyatt and Impact? Well, Brian Alvarez, this past week on the Wrestling Observer live radio show, spoke about Bray Wyatt possibly going to AEW. There was a really weird story, and this has been going around for weeks, and I'm glad that it's kind of over now, that Bray Wyatt could make his AEW debut at this week's past AEW Dynamite show in Rochester, New York. Now, Wednesday's show was a tribute, or certainly was dedicated to the late, great Brody Lee, of course, is from Rochester, New York. And I think it was Dave Meltzer a couple of weeks ago, might have been in the Wrestling Observer newsletter or on the Wrestling Observer radio show, said that there was a feeling that Bray Wyatt was going to make his AEW debut on that show on September 29. And I mentioned it several times here on the channel at the time that made no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, no sense whatsoever. The reason why it made no sense is he couldn't. He was never going to appear on that show. He was released. Oh, I don't have the exact release date in front of me, but he was released. He's still not finished his 90-day non-compete clause, and he was never going to appear Wednesday night unless he had negotiated some kind of early release or he had negotiated some kind of early release from his 90-day non-compete clause, but that wasn't the case. He was still serving his 90-day non-compete clause. In actuality, his 90-day non-compete clause expires on October 29, not September 29. I think, and I've said this time and time again, that Dave Meltzer just got his dates wrong. I think he saw 29, and then he put 2 and 2 together, went 29, wait a minute. 29, AEW Dynamite has a show on September 29 in Rochester, New York. Oh, wouldn't it be amazing if Bray Wyatt could appear? That's where he's going to appear at that event. That's going to happen. He was putting 2 and 2 together and getting 17. He was just getting the wrong output. He was saying that Wyatt was going to appear at that date when he couldn't. Contractually, he could not. Legally, he could not appear for AEW Dynamite on September 29 in Rochester, New York. So when he said that was kind of the expectation, that always blew my mind because I went, well, he can't. He can't. Contractually, he cannot do that. And then he said, well, if he doesn't appear on that show in Rochester, New York for AEW Dynamite, then that means that he's likely going to Impact Wrestling. And that's kind of been a recurring theme here when it comes to Dave Meltzer recently. And I don't mean to go on a Dave Meltzer rant or tangent or anything like that. Dave Meltzer, of course, is very widely respected. He's the reason that people like myself can talk to you and make pro wrestling channels, and people can have pro wrestling websites, and pro wrestling journalism is a thing. Obviously, he was a pioneer. But recently, there have been several instances where he has been getting things wrong, when he talks about, Asuka having nothing creatively for her, and then obviously she shows up and she's in a sling, all this kind of stuff, or Edge being off television for several months and he was on SmackDown on Friday. There have been several instances of that, of people calling him out for it. Alexa Bliss, of course, called him out for that report he made where he said that 1,500 people left the arena on Raw a couple of weeks ago, and then, of course, they didn't. All that kind of stuff, he's been getting it wrong. He's been getting it wrong recently, and I'm not defending Meltzer in the sense that those kind of things, objectively, he's been getting it wrong. On the flip side of things, I do think there are several instances where Meltzer says his opinion or what he thinks is going to happen with no facts to back it up, just his opinion. And because it's Dave Meltzer, people take that as fact. And that's kind of what's happened here a little bit. And it's kind of what's happened here when it comes to Bryan Alvarez and Bray Wyatt as well. That Meltzer said, well, if he doesn't show up on September 29 in Rochester, then he's probably going to go to Impact Wrestling. He doesn't know that. He doesn't. And again, the whole idea that Wyatt was going to show up on September 29 legally is impossible. It was never going to happen unless he wants to get sued, and AEW wants to get sued by WWE for being in breach of contract. That isn't going to happen. So again, this whole Bray Wyatt thing is just very odd, very strange. Nevertheless, Bryan Alvarez added to these rumors this past week prior to the AEW show. So on the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer Live radio show, Bryan Alvarez said that the impression he got, or he has received from some people, is that Wyatt is signing with Impact Wrestling instead of AEW. Now, Alvarez noted that Wyatt hasn't officially signed with Impact Wrestling yet, so he could change his mind and sign with AEW, but the expectation right now is that he would sign with Impact. This is what he said, quote, "I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I do not believe that the former Bray Wyatt is going to AEW. If you ask me, this is not confirmed because nothing is confirmed until somebody signs elsewhere or somewhere. The impression that I have is that it's more likely that he is going to Impact Wrestling." Now, of course, that came after previous reports indicated that Wyatt was likely going to be signing with AEW, potentially even debuting with the company this past week, which he, again, was never going to do. This is what was strange. So I've got it in front of me now. He was released by WWE on July 31st. The 90-day non-compete clause expires on October 29, not September 29. So it's just a sort of, this whole Bray Wyatt Impact Wrestling thing just stems from just, I guess, bad due diligence or no due diligence or confusing opinion with facts or getting facts wrong. I don't know. So that was a big story that, oh, Wyatt's going to go to Impact Wrestling. Wyatt's likely to sign with Impact Wrestling. And lots of Impact Wrestling fans were very happy about this. Some AEW fans were surprised about this. Some people that are just fans of pro wrestling were like, that's surprising. I thought he would go to AEW. He's a big name. He's a big star. He was a big merchandise seller for WWE, former Universal Champion, worked with the likes of John Cena and all of those big names were out there, and creatively, I guess, was stifled, and it was still very, very surprising, in fact, shocking that he was released by WWE back at the end of July, and many expected him to go to AEW like several other high-profile former WWE stars have, and have great success there. So the idea that he was going to Impact was seen as, you know, a bit of a surprise, a massive win for Impact Wrestling, certainly signing a star of his caliber. His reputation was seen as a really big deal for Impact Wrestling. Well, those reports have kind of been quashed over the course of the last few days, and that's not just because he didn't show up at Dynamite on Wednesday night. So this is a report that comes from Fightful Select. A rumor that made the rounds was that Bray Wyatt was close to joining Impact Wrestling, or in fact it was confirmed. But it doesn't sound like the two sides are quite that close, again, according to Fightful Select. While Impact does have a lot of interest in the former WWE Universal Champion, there is no deal between the two, nor is it said to be close. A member of the Impact roster was even asked to reach out to Wyatt in an effort to recruit him to the company. As of right now, at the time of recording, there is still no indication to which promotion Wyatt will be heading to after WWE released him in July of this year. Now, last month, Wyatt teased on social media that he would, quote, "see you all very soon." As I mentioned, Wyatt is still under that 90-day non-compete clause with WWE, which expires Friday, October 29. Now, again, that's the impression I've always had, is that Impact, of course, they're interested in Bray Wyatt, because, again, why wouldn't they be interested in Bray Wyatt? Of course they're interested in Bray Wyatt. Again, he's a huge star, and he was one of the hottest acts in WWE just 18 months ago, and he was in featured matches against the likes of John Cena at WrestleMania. The Fiend was such an original and creative concept until, like with anything, unfortunately, when it comes to WWE nowadays, their creative team, their creative minds get around it. It's designed by committee, and the problem is, it's like the phrase that a camel is a horse designed by committee, in the sense that once several people get their input and put their ideas into it, it becomes something that it wasn't meant to be, or becomes something so far removed from what it once was. And that's the problem. So I don't really have much of an update when it comes to, is Bray Wyatt coming to Impact Wrestling or not. I've said time and time again, my general feeling is, and this isn't like Bryan Alvarez or Dave Meltzer, don't confuse this with a report, because I don't have the insider details here. I'm just a guy that gives his opinion on a channel on YouTube. My opinion always has been that the most likely destination for Bray Wyatt would be AEW, because again, not that he's too big for Impact Wrestling, because I don't mean that in a negative sense, but I just think that when it comes to money, probably Impact can afford Bray Wyatt. Again, Impact Wrestling is a bit of a myth about Impact Wrestling, is that they can't afford stars or they can't afford talent. They can. Anthem is a very, very wealthy company, and Impact Wrestling financially are very well backed. They are. But so's AEW. If it comes to a bidding war, AEW will win that every single day of the year. They will. I just, again, call it a gut feeling, call it whatever you want. I've always just felt that Wyatt will end up going to AEW. I think when push comes to shove, Tony Khan will want him. I think he is different to what they've got there right now, because he is more focused on the character. He is more focused on, the promos as opposed to the pro wrestling side of things, which AEW tends to focus more on the pro wrestling side of things. And I know that's why some people have said he would be better in Impact because of that, because Impact Wrestling will allow him to be this just creative, unique, dark kind of character, and they've said that he can do whatever he wants there, and the whole weird cinematic spooky stuff, the Impact Wrestling is prime real estate for that. They embrace that. They've done that time and time again. But I think, again, it's a bit of a myth that AEW wouldn't allow him to do that. The fact that he is different to what AEW has right now makes me think that he'd be more likely to go there. I really, really do. And look, he was very close with Brody Lee. Brody Lee was a very close friend of his. You don't think that Brody Lee wasn't having conversations with Bray Wyatt, even when Brody Lee was there, saying about how great it was and how creatively freeing and fulfilling it was there? I think Bray Wyatt will go there. I really, really do. And I know that some people say, oh, he's just not a right fit there. I don't think that matters. I really don't think that matters. Now, again, he could go to Impact Wrestling, and if Impact makes him an offer whereby the lightest schedule he'll get out of any company he goes to will be Impact Wrestling. We know how often they tape. They tape once a month over 4 days, and if he can get paid the same amount of money he would probably get in AEW or even close to getting in WWE, then why wouldn't he take that? I mean, he absolutely would be taking that, because he'd be working a fraction of the time and still making the same amount of money. I guess it would then come to, look, we know the exposure isn't there in Impact as it is in AEW. Now, some people have said, well, that's actually a good thing, because Bray Wyatt can help lift that company up. Bray Wyatt can help lift up Impact Wrestling, shine an extra light on them, and then in addition to WWE and AEW, you've also got Impact that's getting a lot of buzz and a lot of attention, and people can go to work there as well. My counter argument to that would be, is we have seen it at this point. I've covered Impact Wrestling here on the channel for about 18 months now, and I've been an Impact Wrestling fan going back to when it was founded in 2002. That Impact Wrestling is only ever going to be viewed by a certain amount of people on Access TV. It is. It had Kenny Omega come there as the first appearance after he won the AEW World Championship. It was on Impact Wrestling, on Access TV, and it was viewed by something like 220,000 viewers. That's the ceiling. That's the ceiling for Impact Wrestling. Granted, there are other ways to watch Impact, and it sometimes isn't fair to look at that metric. It isn't fair to compare Impact Wrestling to WWE and AEW when it comes to viewership and ratings, etc. Because, yes, people watch it on Access TV, but they also watch it on YouTube, or they used to watch it on Twitch, or they used to watch it on whatever it may be. They follow it on social media, or they watch it wherever. That they've got the YouTube Ultimate Insiders and all that kind of stuff, right? I get that. But if he's looking for exposure, and if he's looking to perform in front of the biggest crowds possible that aren't WWE, that's in AEW. AEW just ran Arthur Ashe Stadium in front of 20,000 people. Impact isn't going to do that right now. Now, does Bray Wyatt going there mean that Impact are going to run 20,000 stadiums? No, it's not. It's not. Impact can't barely run arenas right now. They can run these small venues, and yes, it's a different experience, and yes, it's like ECW in comparison to WCW, right? I guess, I don't know. But my feeling is, and it still is at this point, is that Bray Wyatt is going to go to AEW. That's just my feeling, and I know that there are some names that are going to be coming into Impact Wrestling that are very exciting, whether it's Braun Strowman, that looks more likely, Titan, and maybe Braun coming in can persuade Bray Wyatt. I don't know. Maybe they come in and be like, look, let's set this company on fire and let's see what we can do. Maybe that is an avenue to look down. Maybe that's a reason why some people think Wyatt is going to go to Impact Wrestling. Buddy Matthews. The feeling is he's going to be going to Impact Wrestling as well. He wants to focus more on independent dates, and whilst he could do that in AEW, the feeling is he wants to build up his reputation, have lots of matches first, and he wants to do that on the indies, and he wants to do it in Impact Wrestling. So the feeling is that Braun Strowman and Buddy Matthews are going to be coming into Impact Wrestling, which are two massive signings, particularly Braun Strowman. Again, that's a guy, former Universal Champion, was one of the hottest guys in WWE in 2016 and 2017. Real strong talent. That's a big signing when it comes to Impact Wrestling anyway. Of course, if they got Buddy Matthews, Braun Strowman, and Bray Wyatt, that would be huge for Impact Wrestling. My gut feeling is that Wyatt will end up going to AEW. But I could be proven wrong. And look, as someone that covers Impact Wrestling here on the channel and watches Impact Wrestling every week, it would be great for the company. I just don't know if I see it. But that's just me. And look, things can and probably will change over the course of the next few weeks. But my gut feeling is that Wyatt will go to AEW. That's just my feeling on the matter. Some other Impact Wrestling stuff that I do want to talk about. One is Chelsea Green, because Chelsea Green has been announced for the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Knockdown 8-woman tournament. That will, of course, take place next Saturday on Impact Plus. We will be doing a watch-along and a post-show reaction, as always, for that. So be sure to check that out. Green, of course, is a former Knockouts champion herself. She made a return to Impact earlier this year, of course, after she was released by WWE. She joins the likes of Mercedes Martinez, Renee Michelle, and Lady Frost, those who are looking to earn a future Knockouts Championship opportunity by winning the one-night tournament. I know it's already been held and already been taped, but genuinely, I haven't looked at those spoilers, so I don't know. So I'm going into watching it next weekend not knowing, which is how I like to watch it, to be honest with you. So it'll be interesting to see who does indeed become the #1 contender for the Knockouts Championship, and then we'll be facing either Mickie James or Deonna Purrazzo, who of course are facing each other rather at Bound for Glory for the Knockouts Championship. We know that Trey Miguel is the first wrestler to advance to the Bound for Glory 3-way for the vacant X Division Championship after he beat Alex Zane and Laredo Kid this past Thursday. Miguel's never been the X Division champion as well, by the way, so interesting to see if he would be the winner of it. I think he should. As I mentioned before, I think it'll be Steve Macklin versus Trey Miguel. Maybe some other people will be added to that at Bound for Glory too, but I think Trey Miguel should win it. I really do. So interesting to see what happens when it comes to that one. Finally, W. Morrissey has been doing a lot of interviews recently, and this is a really interesting one because he appeared on the Total Nonstop Impact show and explained the partnership of he and Moose and how that's come together and what the plans are for it going forward. He said, quote, "We aren't friends," and I think he'd tell you the same thing. "We are by no means friends. We are acquaintances and maybe formed an alliance to get to the top, and we have similar goals in mind. Once we're both at the top, it's either him or me. You'll see there's going to be no friendship there. We don't like each other. We respect one another, and we appreciate what each is doing for the other, but there's definitely no friendship there. It all came about because we kind of just had the same enemies and the same outlook on Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards. So he was somebody that I thought I could partner with and take care of business with, and then it would come down to us two, and we'll see who the better man is." So I've mentioned this several times, that I think this is going to be Impact Wrestling's versions of, I've mentioned the Road Warriors. I saw someone said the Skyscrapers from WCW. I think that's a really good comparison. That's what it kind of feels like. But the reason these two have been teamed up, not only is to make a badass tag team, but the reason these two have been teamed up is to eventually feud and face each other. We're eventually going to get W. Morrissey versus Moose inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. We just are. When they get to that, I don't know. I think potentially we could see them win the tag titles at some point, I think, and then do a breakup. So I would say maybe Hard to Kill. We see them face off against each other. Maybe Rebellion. I do see it's something that's going to play out. We do know, and I don't know the update on this, it must be said, that W. Morrissey said that he had signed a contract with Impact Wrestling that was good until Bound for Glory, and that it was going to change after then, or expire after then. I would assume he's going to be sticking around for a while. I think he looks great, and he's been doing great stuff in Impact, and there's still so much more that he can do in Impact Wrestling. So I think eventually we are going to get a W. Morrissey versus Moose feud, but I think eventually we're going to see some success too. He said it there. He basically laid out the story. They're not friends, they're acquaintances, and their aim for both of them is to make it to the top, and once they get to the top, they'll face off against each other. So it's a case of they win the tag titles, they drop them, they feud against each other. Who would turn babyface there? Probably would be Moose, I would think, although I prefer Moose as a heel, to be honest with you. Or we see a situation whereby they literally just run through the entire Impact Wrestling roster. Whoever the champion is coming out of Bound for Glory, maybe we then see a situation whereby Josh Alexander, maybe at Hard to Kill, has to defend the Impact World Championship in a triple threat match against W. Morrissey and Moose, and that's finally where the two guys implode and the team breaks off because they're both going after the prize that they both desire the most, that being the Impact World Championship. So I could definitely see them going in that direction as well, but we'll have to wait and see. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these Impact Wrestling news stories you've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really just helps out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.